Welcome, Dillon.
All right. Actually, I ruined it by giving out a solution because I said when I was rehearsing this, I was going to invite more questions than answers, but, we'll go ahead and get started. Incentivizing participation in DAOs. There we go. This is what I look like, or used to look like, I should say. I look a little different now. Last time in Paris, I gave a talk, I had a hat on, so if you don't recognize me, then you might recognize me now, but I'm Dillon, CEO and founder of Commonwealth. So we are a governance tool. Reese was on the panel earlier, so I won't say as much about it. But what is Commonwealth? This is our logo. And basically around 2,000 different projects in crypto, both DAO and on-chain community, use us to replace their discourse. There's lots of other bells and whistles, and not just bells and whistles, like features that users ask us about. But that's maybe the best position that you could ask for at the moment. And so, in the spirit of inviting more questions and answers, this next slide is really about, it's a bear market out here. So thank you to Joanna for finding this cute bear/badger graphic. Both work really well. And I think this room is really a testament to the bear market. Obviously the weather outside is not that nice, but we have the 50 to 100 people who care most about DAOs in here right now. And so this is really up only from here. But it is a challenge because right now it's not all fun, but it's all just content. And so I use this word in air quotes, but actually very intentionally because, like I just said, 50 to 100 people care enough to write like a 5-page proposal, write code for your project or any other project. And in previous panels, we literally named A16Z a few times, so we know by hand the people who quote unquote matter. But it takes more than just proposals to run a community. You need memes, and in a company you need PRDs, you need sprints, you need all these things, and those are all different types of content. And the reason I use content here is, I think sometimes we're too smart for our own good, right? We use these words called DAOs, tokens, delegations, allow lists, and it's not something that my mom is very familiar with, but she definitely knows how to scroll TikTok and WeChat. And those are the most popular user-generated content platforms out there, right? And there are already platforms that do scale, right? And so there's lessons to be learned around, creating rules for default open participation, right? Because that's something new that DAOs give us. Instead of joining a corporation through a job interview, anyone can post, just like they can on a social network, into a DAO. And so, there's obviously differences from that, right? Different types of purposes for this types of content, but it's just content. And this slide, just to talk about this is the layer that we're really talking about, the incentives, but it's important to note that content doesn't just get posted anywhere, it gets posted into a container. And so actually, a really good friend, Reggie James, would probably say something different, but for the purposes of this talk, the containers for these ideas hasn't really changed since, I don't know, the beginning of the smartphone. And what do I mean by that? The feed, Zuck introduced the news feed to everyone, and now we scroll endlessly, right? But the containers for software, for email, for ideas, for text, really hasn't changed that much. And so it's not really the place where we're going to innovate or get a 10x improvement. And then second, the actions to run a community still really haven't changed, right? We still need BD, we still need community and customer support, we still need go-to-market, we still need to write code. And those same functions are the same across the org. So again, not really things that we're changing, although it is getting posted on chain and is permissionless. So that's pretty exciting. And so again, incentives for rewarding people who post these types of content is the thing that's changing. This slide, I actually don't have the source of attribution for, so it's not my chart, but I do have to call that out, is a way to think about how we can kind of incentivize these different levels. And so what you see kind of on the left is really what usually people think about is most tokenomics, is most delegations, we all think about kind of the object level, and we use kind of jargon to kind of describe it, right? You know, we think about A16Z because they're quote unquote powerful, right? That's a very abstract way of thinking about those things, but you know, it gets realized by how many delegations that they hold. And so this is just another way to think about incentives for creating and producing these types of content. And as you'll notice, like, you know, when we think about TikTok or these other things, yes, follower count matters, but I mean, what else matters? I don't know. It's entertainment, I guess. But it's definitely not direct payouts, although that is an incentive that they have now. But the reason for me bringing this slide in here is that there's a larger solution space that we can think about, that we can borrow from existing platforms. And so, you know, ideally when we think about that last slide, it's not just like, okay, token go up. It should feel kind of like, you know, in the short term a certain way, in the midterm a certain way, and the long term a certain way. And what I mean specifically is, hey, in the short term, I may have gotten another $50 worth of USDC or OP, right? But ideally in the midterm, that leads to kind of like more ownership, more points in the ecosystem, and that leads to more empowered people, essentially, to drive new content to be created. And then for a community or for a project, it should ideally lead to better outcomes. So from the short term to the midterm to the long term, we can use those 3 levels of incentives, most concrete to abstract, to bring people on board. And so again, just opening more windows for possibilities rather than answers like food in the back of the room. Sorry, I don't know if the video will get that, but and just kind of going back into this thing and to introduce like governance or DAOs is more than just like one game. It's more than just proposals. There's a lot of different types of content that a DAO needs to, you know, produce to survive, right? You've got to get the idea out, so you need great memes. You need to kind of do warm intros to people. You need great Telegram groups. Those are all types of content, right? And containers for that might be DMs on Twitter, on Telegram. But again, these are different, like, specific types of content that can be produced within a community. And ideally, yeah, there's more ways for people to play. The content gets created on different timescales, and so another kind of callback to things that are more concrete versus abstract. You know, every day we can create a meme, we can create a transaction, we can commit some code. We can spin up an intro. Every week we might want to convert an intro to a qualified lead, create a PR that actually enters the code base. We want to do a bounty, do a sprint. You know, every company really runs on weekly or bi-weekly sprints. And every single month, you know, these roll up into epics and things like that. And so again, just framing these things as just like text or content that it gets produced in a company or in a DAO. And so this is kind of a call out to the previous 2 slides again. So based on the type of content that you're looking to produce, whether it's memes or decisions that might be on a longer time scale, you want to reward them differently, right? And I would usually say you want to reward the contributors with method used to rank the content, right? And so if you're incentivizing governance votes, reward it with delegations, ideally on a proactive basis rather than a reactive basis. But you know, those are kind of like mirrors. And so, you know, one interesting call out I think here is obviously crypto is most associated with money right now in DeFi, and the 2 experiments that both Tally and Joe Grace are running do relate to money. Splitting out fees splitting out the total grant amount to the proposal creator on Tally, or kind of like the creator of the joke race, the race I sell, or the contest rather, directly. And so these are, you know, just forms of monetary incentivization. But again, there's other ways that we can incentivize. We just want to make sure that that always gets called out. And so again, I kind of promised to invite more possibilities than answers here. But we do have basically one experiment that we're going to be running internally and actually externally, hopefully with all of you. And that is what we're calling community stake, essentially here. So there, again, is a lot of different content that needs to be produced within a community. It's a decision, it's a grant proposal, it's memes, it's new ideas that can be used downstream. And so each of these types of content within a community, either at the start or an existing community, can be incentivized. And so the way that we want to approach this is, for now, when you spin up a community on Commonwealth, you can create basically a bonding curve based kind of like stake pool, similar to friend tech, if that's an easier metaphor. And others can purchase stake. So right now with ETH, but what we've heard from folks is if they have an existing governance token, they'd like to be able to leverage that. And the way that that kind of like purchase of stake translates into better ideas and better content, ideally, is, well, the more stake you hold, the more you care about this type of content. And therefore, you should get more power when it comes to the upvotes. And the more stake, the more ideas that are posted, the more attention that type of content gets, driving, hopefully, a virtuous cycle. But again, we're still falling into the same thing here, where we're just rewarding money, the use of money for a specific type of content. It goes and translates into the influence for ranking specific types of ideas. But we know that, again, we'd like to be able to reward contributions with more flexible types of rewards. And so that is definitely something that's top of mind. But if there's one message that I hope everyone can take away from today, is it's just content, and there's a lot of content out there, lots of algorithms to explore, and this is our first attempt. Thank you so much.